Hello, good evening, and welcome to On the Time Lash, episode 90. I was going to do some kind of like egg-based pun, some moon-based pun. I mean, that moon-based pun is already a kind of pun for what we're going to be talking about. But I'm Mark Donaldson. With me as ever is Ben Verth.
Hello, it's me. It's me, Ben. And may I say, Mark, looking at the two images on the screen, lockdown looks like it has treated you well, sir. Where I look like I have been ravaged by the very idea of it.
I'll let you into a little secret, Ben. There's an option on Zoom that if you you can change your video settings so that it pretties you up a bit. So I just done that.
Ooh, you got a cheeky filter. Ooh, somebody's got a filter on.
Smooth out the old rough edges, you know. Now that we're on video.
And I love your virtual background.
Although I do look slightly like an auto facsimile of myself.
You look. I don't want to say you look like you've had work done, but you look like you've had work done. I mean, that's
what buy me a coffee. But you know, £50 worth of plastic surgery does not go very far. I'm not going to tell you what it is.
But you look nice. Anyway, this has become quite homoerotic. So yeah, here we are.
It was bound to after 89 episodes, you know. So
yeah, by the time we hit 100,
eventually got a giveaway.
And I feel like there's something. I mean, so here in Dublin, it has been and still is a beautiful sunny day. So there's something quite fitting in us drawing the curtains. Pulling the blinds down so that we can talk about two moon-based adventures.
Indeed, indeed. Well, as the moon's about to, actually the sun's just setting. It's a beautiful sunset just not in my hallway, but that I can see from my hallway.
Yeah.
Which is quite nice. But yeah, the moon will be with us presently as we discuss Kill the Moon in our new Who Watch Through, and we've paired that up with the Moonbase because the moon.
Yeah. But it's fine. It works.
It works because there is some interesting stuff I want to talk about in Kill the Moon, about kind of rooting it in kind of Troughton era sci-fi.
Yes.
But we'll cover that in the fullness.
I mean, but there's also direct homages, let's say, in Kill the Moon and the Moonbase. Yeah. And so it does I think you get something. Well, do you get anything out of it? I mean, I guess that's what we're going to be talking about. But you get a little something out of seeing these, right? Watching these two stories in close proximity.
Definitely.
How's the week treated you, mate? I see. Yet again, there's a bit of rearrangement on the shelves behind you. Or have you just moved over slightly from where you were sat?
I've moved. Yeah, I've moved because I've got a tablet recording the audio. So I've kind of moved up slightly further along the desk. So now you can see stuff that isn't related to Doctor Who on this side.
Boo, don't care. Boo.
Exciting. Yeah, fine. I've not really, I've done nothing Doctor Who related apart from watch these two stories.
Yeah.
I've been watching 15 hours of landmark German television because, you know, that's the sort of thing I like to do for fun. So,
wow, what is that? Why did you do that?
I've been watching Heimat, which is, you know, sort of widely regarded as one of the greatest television dramas of all time.
Okay.
And it's pretty fucking good. So it was quite a culture shock to come and watch Kill the Moon and the Moonbase after that.
Ooh,
you know,
sounds like a comeback.
This sweeping chronicle of Germany pre and post World War II through the prism of a rural village, and talking about all these incredible themes of family and responsibility and loss and society. And it's like the moon's an egg.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy, are we going to have a lot to talk about, huh?
It's a tonal shift that nearly broke my neck. How's your week been?
It's been all right. It's been good. Yeah, not well. I'll tell you. I made a guest appearance on BBC Radio Scotland's panel show, The Good, the Bad, and the Unexpected.
Yes, congratulations.
And they have the excuse me. Well, that's it. The corona. I'm on it. The premise of the show is that you talk about a good thing that's happened to you. You talk about a bad thing that's happened to you. and then you get from the host some unexpected questions. And my unexpected questions were Doctor Who related. I had
I need to listen.
the other guests were comedian Joe Caulfield and John Beattie, ex-Scotland rugby captain and now BBC Radio Scotland host. And the questions were, they would give a name. Is it the name of a Doctor Who baddie, or is it the name of like a nickname of a rugby player? And as I said on the programme, it's something that I know a lot about and something I know nothing about. But thankfully, the stuff that I know a lot about, Doctor Who baddies, held me in good stead. And I have the record for answering the most correct unexpected questions for the radio series.
Nicely done, sir. Nice. Do you have to defend that title at some point later down the line? Or?
I think exactly.
Or does it just get handed over?
Like, yeah, nobody cares. So what's that? Yeah, I did that and watched another couple of Mythmakers, of which, because it related to the Moonbase, we'll talk about in the Moonbase. But again, they just get fucking better and better, those Mythmakers on Amazon Prime.
We had a listener, I'll get their name actually before I say this. Which, I mean, on the one hand, it's great that we've broken the American market. And that's it. Andy Van K on Twitter said, just sort of tweeted us today saying, all your references to the Mythmaker series kill me because they're totally unavailable here in the US. Cannot even rent them digitally. I haven't seen a single minute of any episodes. So sorry, Andy.
Oh my God! Then, like, if you haven't
we
seen
should
them,
we should just, I don't know, send those kind of bootleg VHS cassettes of the Mythmakers.
Oh my God! I mean, like, so if you haven't seen them, it must sound like a fever dream when we're describing them. Like, it's not even, like, the reason that you've
it's
never...
like a fever dream watching them, Ben.
The reason that Andy's never seen them is they don't exist. We've just gone mental in lockdown and we're just... Because the one... We'll talk about it now as a kind of prelude, and I watched them because we're doing the Moonbase. I really think that two of the most underrated Doctor Who companions are Ben and Polly. And there's a Mythmakers about Michael Craze. And one of the things that I realized about Mythmakers is that they, like Doctor Who, have little cliffhangers from one episode into the other. So the Michael Craze episode starts with a cliffhanger from the Nicola Bryant episode, which is Nicholas Briggs has taken Nicola Bryant around. It's the streets where they shot Attack of the Cybermen. And haven't seen the Nicola Bryant thing, so I don't know how they get into that situation. But they're coming to the end of the interview, and a car drives by with a spitting image puppet of the Sixth Doctor, of Colin Baker, leaning out the window, catcalling. I don't know what he's up, yelling at her. Yeah. And she turns around and goes, "Hi, Colin," gets in the car, they both drive off. And then Nicholas Briggs is beamed, after asking her if she wants to go to the pub for a drink, is suddenly beamed up into like a snowy landscape and winds up in the pub that Michael Craze.
Yeah, and he's got a kind of 90s, he's got a 90s car phone, which he's kind of using as a kind of quantum leap style device.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's bizarre.
And so it's great. So Andy, if you scroll back in our Twitter newsfeed, Mark, well, last night, as and when we're recording, but a week ago, I guess, to when this is going out, stuck up a picture of said spitting image puppet of the Sixth Doctor, and fuck me, I mean, that image, that will stay with you. That will. Also, I guess we need to explain what spitting image is as well to people from America. It was like a satirical puppet show that was on during the 80s. These kind of rubber kind of, wow, there's a lot. When you think about it, Britain, there's a lot to unpack when you're trying to make a cultural connection with someone else.
Christ. Britain, there's a lot to unpack. Sums this weekend up quite succinctly. But we're not that podcast, so I guess let's move on and
let's
talk
do
about something.
All right,
much less problematic.
Yeah, well, let's...
or is it?
Well, exactly. Well, let's just do it. Okay, so we'll just go ahead. We'll go kill the moon. Yeah. Let's start. Let's
kill the moon.
Let's do the old stats. Okay, so Kill the Moon was written by Peter Harness. and it was directed by Paul Wilmshurst. This is his first directorial meeting with Doctor Who, but he would direct the next one, Mummy on the Orient Express, and he would direct Last Christmas as well. It was broadcast on Saturday the 4th of October 2014, broadcast at 8:30. It was watched on the night before by 4.81 million people, and that rose by the end of the week to 6.91 million, which is, let's just have a wee, like, it's actually good. It's a little up. It's a tiny bit up from last week from The Caretaker. So those are the stats. Those are the statarudos. I think now we all know what's coming now, and we all look forward to it. Let's play
Dexys Where Did It Come game.
Yes.
Yes, let's play.
So it's Kill the Moon, of course.
Yeah.
This is the dynamic rankings poll, which is every Doctor Who story up until the end of Peter Capaldi's run. Before I get to our guesses and the right answer, Derek has a brief comment on Kill the Moon, which we'll come back to, I think, later on in the podcast. But he's
What's fucking hell?
Just Facebook's just an awful glitchy piece of shit. So Derek says Kill the Moon has spiders in it, which automatically makes it better than the site that is, say, Kinder or the Crimson Bloody Horror. I think he's specifically calling out both of us there, but however, the ending spoils it. So Ben, spiders, the moon, eggs. Where do you think it comes?
Where do you think?
Indexes, where did it come game?
I mean, this is going to form the bulk of how we relate to it, which is it is such a polarizing experience, that, fan commentary. I would think that the idea that it's pretty poorly received is the correct angle to go with. So is it 289? I think it's something like 280.
280. Ooh,
yeah, I think it's.
Ooh. I mean, I'm going to base it on the listener correspondence, which of course I've read in advance. And polarizing is absolutely the word. But I think you are right. More people probably dislike it than like it. But I think 280 is too low. I'm going to go 254. 254.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to go with.
So give us the good or bad news.
So Derek says, all right, lads, according to the dynamic rankings poll, Kill the Moon comes in at number 262.
Right. So you're near.
So I was closest.
Yeah.
I'm closest, yeah. With a score of 5.7 between Dragonfire at 261 and the Gunfighters at 263.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, right next to the Gunfighters. That's interesting. Which, yeah. I would say two Doctor Who stories that take quite a big swing and miss by some margin.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
But who cares what I think at this current stage in the podcast?
Yeah.
I want to hear from their listeners.
Sorry, just looking at your screen, you look like you've got a bit of a sepia tone to your camera, so it makes it look like I'm having a conversation with, or that I'm watching some home video of you after you died tragically, and I can't move on with my life.
Oh man!
I just like reminiscing about the great times that we had.
It's like Ricky Gervais's Afterlife. Paul McAvoy on Facebook says, the moon is an egg is rock bottom. We've had a bad to middling time so far with season 8, and this doesn't really help its case. Poor dialogue, poor plotting, a moral quandary that is arbitrarily unfair and left field. This altogether with an ending twist that's so completely tremendously stupid that it's hard not to laugh really isn't going to impress any 50th anniversary newcomers. For as much shit as season 7B got, I really missed the series being middling to good rather than middling to bad. I actually miss Aka 10. Well, that's all right, Paul. You can tweet along. Actually, that'll happen by the time this episode goes out, so never mind. Fuck now. I missed the waters of Mars when the moral quandary was, well, shit, but less shit. Paul really made me laugh on Twitter when the Time Lord Victorious spin-off, whatever the hell that thing is, was announced. And I was like, oh, it's probably, I assume this is going to take place in that sort of weird gap between the waters of Mars and the end of time. And Paul was like, yeah, that whole Time Lord Victorious thing, oh, I'm a real bad guy. No, you're not. Oh, okay, no, I'm
not. I tell you what, would you, because we're past Degsy's Where Did It Come game, you want to pop us back to the gallery view?
Oh. There we go.
There we are.
Oh, I've got a bit more golden light.
Yeah, you see, this is what I was talking about. It looks like I'm watching some sort of, it looks like some sort of weird Doctor Who version of Afterlife, where I'm watching old home videos of you.
Yeah. Or that really weird bit in the Stephen Moffat biopic, in the Stephen Hawking biopic, where they cut to him and his family just as he's kind of suffering from the early stages of motor neuron disease, and they're kind of wheeling him around, and it's horrendous and saccharine and maudlin, and it's a horrible fucking film. But that's for another podcast. Jeff Waddle says, kill the moon. Unlike most, I've got no issue with the whole moon as an egg stuff. Where I do have a problem is with the whole Doctor leaving it for the companion to decide on the planet's fate. And when has he done that before? It's so out of character, it's bizarre. And the whole utter garbage, switch your lights on to decide, what the fuck? Well, actually, Jeff says, WTF? Other than that, it looks good. Not groundbreaking, but decent. And finally on Facebook, J.R. Southall says, the great irony of this pairing, obviously we paired it with the Moonbase, is that you have one story that makes basic dramatic sense, but has a handful of technical or scientific quibbles, which fandom largely went ballistic over because somehow it rubbed them up the wrong way. Yeah. And another story that fandom largely loves, thanks to novelization, that promotes an eeriness mostly missing from the television original. That's actually, I was going to say, that's maybe why my targets look a bit ruffled, is I was trying to see if I had the novelization of the Moonbase, which I'm sure I did at some point, but I don't have with me. So I could overlook the scientific issues with Kill the Moon because getting them right would be basically irrelevant to the narrative. The seas all rising at once could simply mean the seas all got extremely rough at the same time. While the issue of the new moon having the same mass as the space dragon that lays it would be overcome by having the hatchling's mother coming to fetch it at the moment of its birth and laying a new egg in its place. Suffice it to say, it's really the script editor's job to spot these issues rather than the writer's job to avoid them. But either way, Kill the Moon is still as eerie as Doctor Who and the Cybermen tried to persuade you that the Moonbase was going to be. Interesting. And over on Twitter, Rasslon's Trousers says, that was quite seamless, I like that. I liked Kill the Moon at the time, but the more I thought about it afterwards, the more it fell apart. It looks great, but the plot is silly, the science dumb, and the tension between the Doctor and Clara is exhausting. Can't they just go off and have a few fun adventures occasionally? Well, exactly. Whoa. Spooky Sween. Kill the Moon is a weird episode for me. It has a really dumb premise, but it also has great character dynamics and great acting. It's certainly not the best episode ever, but it's certainly not the worst. But it gets 10 out of 10 for nothing else but the way Capaldi says, the moon's an egg. Dylan Reese, I don't mind Kill the Moon. Doctor Who's full of preposterous ideas, so I can buy the moon as an egg. It's no more ridiculous than burning regeneration, energy that doesn't burn your clothes, or everyone on planet Earth turning into the Master. The most ridiculous part of the episode is that they asked the Earth to choose by turning the lights on and off, but they can only see half the planet. What if the other half had other ideas? Insert Brexit gag here.
Yeah, there is something to be said about that. It's very Western orientated. You can see Europe and you can see America. And what I also found funny is that if you watch it, Britain is the last to turn their lights out. Like everywhere else is, you know, but the last ones that you see are Britain, and you just go, yeah, yeah.
And then finally, Lewis Baston says, "Kill the Moon makes me cringe. In setting up a not particularly suspenseful moral dilemma, it violates plausibility more than Doctor Who should." Well, so I think that sets the stall out, Ben, for us to pluck vegetables out of. I don't know, but that metaphor kind of ran away from me.
What are you drinking before we
start? Well, I'm still on the old weight loss regime, so I'm still on my whiskey, which obviously, as I've discussed before, I think every time I struggle to find a drink for the Capaldi era, I'm going to have a whiskey because I think they complement each other quite well. The sort of harshness and the sweetness together. So yeah, that's what I'm having.
And it's no imposition, mate. You bloody love a whiskey as well.
I bloody love a whiskey, Ben. Bloody love a whiskey.
Well, mine's is also a well, okay. It is like the Doctor about the moon, concerned with its weight. I'm also concerned with my weight.
Nice. That's a much better segue.
So I'm having, you can't really see it because of the background, but it's a vodka and slimline tonic.
Very nice.
And you can't really see the glass either. If I hold it down here, can you see it? It's the biggest, most ridiculous kind of glass that I could get because
it's not a gin balloon, is it? It's just a big wine glass.
Yeah, it's just one of the, like, it's just a big kind of ornate guest wine glass because it's fancy and ridiculous, just like Kill the Moon. That's.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that's the choice that I made there. Wow, where do you start? Where do you start?
Because I think this gets off to a decent start.
Yeah.
I think, that's and I'm the same. I don't really, as ridiculous as it is, the moon being an egg is the least of this story's problems, I think. Well, okay, maybe not the least of the story's problems.
No, I honestly don't know where to get my teeth into this. So, yeah.
But I think it gets off to a pretty good start, an atmospheric start, once they're on the moon and they're kind of exploring the landscape. I think it looks great. I think it looks, because I watched the Blu-ray of it, and why is it so
That was weird. The moment you said Blu-ray, there was a blue flash on your screen.
That's really weird. I wonder why that's done that. Oh well, never mind. I'm blue again. But yeah, I was watching the Blu-ray, so the picture quality was, really sharp.
Yeah. And
you could really sort of see because it's a quarry. They're walking around a quarry, as they always have in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
But there's some lovely production design choices and some, very sort of subtle, I presume, CGI matte paintings going on in the back that make it look like they're on the moon.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of CGI when you look at the Doctor Who extra. When they come out of the space shuttle, Doctor Who extra, you can see that it's basically just the doorway, and then the rest of that ship is CGI'd, and all the background stuff. Like it's meant to be the moon at night, but they're shooting it at broad daylight.
Right.
In Lanzarote. It's not just a quarry.
Oh, of course. So it is.
It's a volcanic landscape in Lanzarote.
I'd forgotten that. Yeah.
So it's obviously they made a big thing about this being the first time they shot in Lanzarote since the Planet of Fire, and a joke original title for this was Return to Sarn. Which I remember some people got hold of and were like, "Oh my god!" But it was, Would it have been better if we got a return to Sarn rather than a kill the moon? I don't know.
Would we? So yeah, so I think there's some atmospheric stuff. I think Hermione Norris is decent. I mean, she's playing the same kind of character Hermione Norris always plays, which is a kind of slightly steely, snarky woman of a certain age.
Which works on, I don't know, Cold Feet or an ITV crime drama. I cannot believe that the person that they've sent as presumably the last best hope for humanity, the captain of the rocket crew, which is, what's that film that Bruce Willis is in, that they've got to blow up the asteroid? What's that? Armageddon. Like, it's basically that. It's basically an Armageddon kind of adventure. And they've sent someone who is the most sullen, sulky, moping about kind of, I don't know who. It just doesn't look, she doesn't ever represent a character that looks like that is the person who's going to get that job done. You know, I can imagine more certainly, obviously, you know, there's the willingness to engage with Clara and Courtney and talk about why they should or shouldn't do it. I just kept thinking, like, presumably your orders are do it at all costs and save humanity. So you would have thought she'd have been a bit more forceful, maybe used a gun, maybe had some sort of military experience. I don't know. She just seemed a bit too unbelievable.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Pushing the threat of what it's supposed to be to Earth, you know.
But I think that comes down to, I think, as JR kind of pointed out, it's a kind of script editor issue. Because there's a lot of things in this which feel like, and I think her character is one of them, because you're absolutely right. You know, she doesn't need Courtney and Clara to set those bombs off or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's all done. It's literally just, I did that.
You've done it, yeah. It's great.
This is weird.
Maybe I don't know what you're using, but it's like you've got the equivalent of you know, like a DJ's got a microphone that when he puts on a particular song, there's a particular color scheme that comes up.
Yeah. I don't think I've got that, but maybe I've secretly got that, and every time, no. Maybe if I say flinty, no, okay. But so she doesn't need Clara and Courtney or the Doctor.
Yeah.
She kind of just needs them to stay out of her way.
Yeah.
And she just can detonate the charges. It seems to be by the end. And then they talk her out of it, and she's like, Clara turns the thing off, the Doctor turns up, and they sawed off.
Yeah.
But you're right, she's kind of, I think, you know, I feel like in the writing, or at least maybe not even in the writing, I think in Peter Harness's head, it's that I think she is supposed to be a bit more open and a bit more kind of, because she has this enormous responsibility over this hatchling inside the moon.
Yeah.
Doctor Who's a wonderful television program where you can say sentences like that. But she feels this responsibility over it, and she's struggling with that kind of morality. But I don't think any of it's really there in Hermione Norris's performance in those scenes.
Yeah, she's obviously, like, the Doctor explicitly refers to her as a scientist. You know, she's obviously got a complex about wanting to go to the moon, especially in a period where it seems like it's overtly stated that moon travel is non-existent.
This is what it kind of reminded me less of the Moonbase and more of the Seeds of Death.
Yeah.
Where they've kind of given up on space travel and they have to get a space shuttle out of the museum for the Doctor and Jamie and Zoe to go and help the team at the station.
Yeah.
It feels like it's kind of taking place in that same kind of era.
Yes, it certainly does, yeah.
So that was quite a nice touch. And I don't know if I feel like that was deliberate, but maybe it wasn't. But I feel like it was.
I think it probably was. I think because there's enough references to other stuff that I feel like what you're seeing is the beginning of that kind of Troughton era space program that you kind of that humanity reaching out into space type of thing. We're only 20 years from the Moonbase.
Which direction? So
Kill the Moon is in
this?
2049 and the Moonbase is 2070.
Right.
And in fact, when in the Moonbase, the Doctor is trying to guess when they've landed. He guesses that it's 2050. So we're in that area. We're in that kind of that Troughton era, humanity reaching out into space, which I guess the Doctor overtly starts talking about at the end of this. But yeah, I just don't buy her. Like she's supposed to be the kind of, I'm sad about doing this, but it's just like, you're really sulky about doing this. It's like it's less about somebody having to blow up the moon, and it's like, okay, well, is there washing that you have to put away, you sulking teenager, on the moon before you've got to do this? Is that what? That's what it feels like. It's
definitely that kind of frustration you get. Well, it feels like that frustration that I get where I wake up in the morning and it's another day of lockdown and it's another day of doing the dishes before making dinner and then having to do the dishes again. It's that kind of like, okay, I'll blow up the moon if I have to.
Yeah.
But I'm only gonna have to blow it up again when it fucking gets to the.
Yeah, there's a lot of strangeness that they try to draw in the picture of what the world is like. I don't know. You're like, is it? So let's focus on it. It's interesting what you said about it's the moon as an egg is the least of this stuff. What else? What else is on your shopping list?
I'll build, but I think you're right. I think the world building. There's some really nice lines, like really nice kind of little sketches that you get. Like I wrote down one of the lines, which is, at least I thought I did. Yeah, second-hand space shuttle, third-hand astronauts. Like just little glimpses into this world that's abandoned space travel. I like, but yet, and I think JR kind of alluded to it in his comments, that this idea of the sea levels, like the Doctor says, if the sea levels were to rise that far, whole cities would be drowned. And she's like, yeah, they would be. And it's like, well, what is the state of the Earth at this point?
Yeah.
And I don't think you ever really get a sense of that. And I think if you're going to make a Doctor Who story that has this massive moral quandary at the end of it, which is, well, what do we do about this situation? I think you need to know a bit more about Earth and what they're sacrificing to save this creature.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get that, other than a few words about drowned cities and rising sea levels.
Yeah,
which
is also not apparent.
Not far away from right now, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's also not apparent because nothing looks amiss with the globe. Well, unless the drowned stuff is all the stuff around the back of the globe, all your Asias and Chinas and Australias, all the stuff you can't see. That's
So there's like little things like that I'm not a big fan of. I think the moon being an egg is ridiculous, because I think it's ridiculous, not so much because the moon's an egg, but because the moon's an egg in an incredibly, like an impressively dark and bleak Doctor Who story.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly daft idea, but treated incredibly seriously. To the sort of level of kind of po-facedness that you kind of just go, and I do wonder if that's why people have an issue with it. I think if it had been like a really fucking light throwaway Russell T Davies style story, like with those kind of comic book colours and that kind of slightly kind of soap opera camera lens, and I think people might be a bit like more, well, Doctor Who was a bit daft this week, but let's see what next week's like. They got a mummy on the Orient Express. That looks fantastic. But this, it's everything's so serious.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I mean, you said it last week when we were in the preamble to what we were going to do for this episode at the end of the last podcast. And it's, I mean, it's an abortion thing. There's a bunch of abortion stuff.
Yeah.
This
thought,
whole thing.
After,
like it's
yeah. Well, after I said it, I thought, am I overreacting? Like, is it maybe just a sort of thing that I read too much into? But
yeah.
no, it seems pretty blatant.
It's there are usages of language which I think overtly spell it out. It's Doctor Who trying to do like a Star Trek Next Generation kind of issues based type of thing. Unfortunately, it does it so well. So first of all, it does it so in your face that I can see why. It does it so in your face in a way that Doctor Who has never done before. So it wrong foots you in that way. You can't believe that suddenly Doctor Who. Wow, we're on at 8:30 now. So that's a far cry from when it used to be a kind of 6:30, 7 o'clock kind of thing, and and it's also is dealing with something so incredibly. I don't want to say polarizing, as if there's the crazy religious people have a point, because like they don't have a point. Yeah. But I think in the discussion and what it's talking about, it manages to be something along the lines of Kablam for the 13th Doctor, which is it botches the message that it's trying to get across. Like this Kill the Moon succeeds in being both a pro-choice and pro-life thing, and I don't think you can really get away from the fact that Clara is maybe well within her rights to be yelling at the Doctor at the end, not just for the situation that he has placed her and Courtney in, but also because it's an old white guy who's looked at the audience and went, let's talk about this and we'll do it my way and I'll define the conversation.
Yeah, which is also in the writing team as well.
Yeah.
It's Stephen Moffat as exec and showrunner, Peter Harness as writer. Yeah. It's two guys overseeing that script.
Yeah.
And I think part of me feels like it's kind of, it starts to go off in that direction and just, oh shit, we've taken it in this direction. What do we do here? Do we commit to it and make a statement, or do we just kind of like put, for want of a better term, pull out and kind of just touch on the subject, but kind of leave it as kind of just not kind of coming down on either side of the argument.
Yeah.
To the point that, you can read whatever you want into it, which, is either. And it seems to lean more a bit to the old pro-life thing.
Well, yeah, because I mean, so I don't think that anything in examining an issue has to necessarily have a stance. Like, it is enough sometimes just to weave stories together showing both sides and and how these things can affect many different types of people. But at the end of it, Clara does ask the rest of the world what to do. The rest of the world decides, and her mind, is it Ludovic is gonna pull the plug. Clara essentially listens to her insides and what people have said and saves the life, and then she's rewarded by a white man showing the fulfilling life and the goodness that if they had allowed this thing to live, what life has been allowed to flourish when it was born. So it's definitely very, I don't know. It's problematic. I never want to jump on board with a brilliant term. Another name for keyboard warriors on Twitter is Twitler youth.
Fucking
I
hell.
love Twitter. So I've never wanted to be a kind of liberal Twitler youth kind of thing, but I felt uncomfortable slightly watching it because
and
I think you have a responsibility to understand the power of what you are saying in the conclusions that you make. Which I guess is the same thing, as I said, with Kablam. You could say exactly the same thing about Kablam. It's like, really? Were they all right to be like, no, actually, Amazon is fine. It's just what you do with Amazon that's the problem. When I think as a nation, as a society, we have kind of went, I think Amazon might be the problem.
Yeah. I mean, because all this kind of stuff and this is that leads into I think the main issue with this story.
Yeah.
Is it is the Doctor, and I just don't get any of his motivations. I don't understand why he does what he does. You know, that kind of, I can't make the choice. He always makes the choices. You know, whether that choice is to be like, oh well, you know, history can't be changed, so let's fuck off, like he does in Fires of Pompeii, or well, we can sort of blur the lines a little bit and make a change here, which he always fucking does. Yeah. And it's an odd thing. And I was trying to figure out why this story, why, aside from the whole abortion allegory, although like his final line is "womankind, it's your choice" before he fucks off in the TARDIS. You're like, yeah, all right, yeah, okay. Maybe I was, you know, I was right. I wasn't thinking I was being oversensitive. It's definitely an allegory for abortion because those words, you know, have that power. But I don't quite understand why he does it. He always makes the choices. As Clara says, you know, that kind of line she has at the end where it's like, you know, you walk our planet, you breathe our air, like you're as much part of humanity as I am, kind of thing. But so is it pettiness? That's kind of what I landed on at the end. Is that what the story? I just don't. It's supposed to throw this big spanner in the works midway through the series to be like, oh, you know, the Doctor and Clara aren't really getting on, whereas we've kind of seen that they are.
Yeah.
In The Caretaker, sure, they had a bit of an argument over Danny, but they're carrying on with their life, and Danny's kind of made his peace with it, and that's kind of they've kind of come to this uneasy agreement, you know. Yeah. And as we said in the Time Heist episode, he seems to have softened from the kind of harshness in the first couple of episodes. So it kind of, I don't get the need to go, oh wait, no, oh look, he can still surprise you, and he can still be a bit unpleasant, and he can still, and the only thing, and the final confrontation between the Doctor and Clara seems to suggest, because it's so ambiguous, you know, that kind of, oh, did you know what was going to happen? Oh, I didn't know what was going to happen. Even though he now has developed this superpower where he can see through the timelines.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense. That's another issue, but we'll come to that. But it seems like it's so but the other thing is like she's kind of saying, I can't remember exactly the line. I thought I'd written it down, but I don't think it did. But she's kind of suggesting that the Doctor's patronising her and trying to teach her a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, right, okay, so then what is that lesson? And the only thing I could really think of is that the episode starts with the Doctor and Clara having an argument over Courtney. And her saying, oh, you can't tell people they're not special. Mm-hmm. And so the Doctor goes, all right, fine, let's go to the moon. All right, that's special, isn't it? You're the first school kid on the moon. Isn't that brilliant? And then she gets to be part of this major decision in the sort of future history of the Earth. And I say, well, there you go, you are special.
Yeah.
And they say, well, okay, I proved you right by doing this, and this was all you're doing. And I think, as we kind of will discover as the series goes on, Clara's arc is that she becomes more like the Doctor. But here, it seems much more like that kind of Seventh Doctor and Ace thing of he's trying to turn her into him, rather than the other way around. And I just don't think it lands, and I don't really understand the sort of motivations behind it.
Yeah.
Which is quite a rambly way to basically get to that conclusion.
No, I get it, because I'm probably going to ramble in my thinking about it as well. It's interesting you say that. I had kind of thought of it in two other ways. The first one being that now that the Danny and Clara relationship is out there, the Doctor knows about it. I wonder if there is still some kind of jealousy. She loves Danny. She wants to be with Danny. So does the Doctor have to step up the presentation of what life with him is like? It's not enough now just to compete with Danny's affections by just having adventures, just rumbling about in time. The next step is giving her some of that almighty power of a Time Lord, the decision making, the grasping at the great momentous elements of these adventures, and it backfires for him. He thinks that she, as this control freak, which we never really get a sense of other than people explicitly say that she's a control freak, he thinks that she's going to be like, I've had the taste of that next step of being a time adventurer, and I liked it. And he just wasn't prepared for her to chew him out for what he did. Another reason could be he senses that time is running out for him and Clara, and to soften the blow for himself, he begins to try and push her away by being reckless, by being silly, by stepping up the danger and the stress levels of what it is like to be with him. Now, in both cases, there's nothing to back that up. And I think really what the issue here is, why does he do it? I think we've talked about this before, that Doctor Who being on at 8:30 in this period is probably a symptom of BBC budgeting. Rather than make a 9 p.m. drama and Doctor Who, if you can just save money by making those two things into one and just beefing up the darker content and place Doctor Who in that kind of 8:30, 9 p.m. kind of slot. And so I would imagine that now I don't know if that's correct or not. No, but I would imagine that the darker tone for this series of Doctor Who is because the BBC have went, look, can you step up from being the family thing to the prestige drama thing, and therefore they have the scope, the canvas to do a lot more with Doctor Who than ever they did. And so this has been an experiment in telling something a bit more adult, a bit more crucially also American, and it's an issues show. But what that also means as well is how do you facilitate that storytelling, that it comes organically from the characters, and but not do it in the kind of, I don't know, 20 odd episodes that you get in an American series and only the 10 episodes that you get with Doctor Who. Well, the answer is we haven't quite worked that out yet. And so the character just does lunacy things. They introduce it that it's going to be a darker take on the character, a take on the show, and hope that papers over some of the cracks as to why a character would do those things.
Yeah.
And so, again, me also rambling. I don't know, man.
No, I think that's I think that is an interesting point. I like that idea of it kind of taking, because it is. I think it was Paul McAvoy had said in a chat we were just having on the Facebook page about how he kind of put when we were, I think it was in our sort of one of the I think it was the Robot Sherwood episode where we talked about kind of YouTube criticism.
Yeah.
And he was saying you kind of can't complain about Doctor Who attracting that level of kind of YouTube critique when it's absolutely courting that kind of like American cult audience.
Yeah.
Who are used to kind of Battlestar Galactica and Star Trek Deep Space Nine and all these kind of things. And I think that's a fair point. And I do think you are absolutely right that this is kind of the point where Doctor Who does kind of lean, I think, more into that. Because they flirted with it through the Matt Smith era. It's going to appeal more to the American market. But it does seem like here they kind of go all in on the kind of, well, what does Doctor Who as a kind of prestige sci-fi show look like?
Yeah.
And I think that's what leads to the problem. The other problem I have with it is that kind of muddled sense of this really daft, silly, childish Doctor Who idea sort of wrapped up inside this quite dark sci-fi morality play. And it just doesn't mesh together in a satisfying way for me.
Yeah,
really.
Because they also go out for they go for the horror element. Apparently Peter Harness was told for the first half of the episode by Stephen Moffat and the quote was, Hinchcliffe the shit out of it. So that's and it succeeds on that level. You're
definitely
right speaking earlier. It is, I think, it's one of the best looking Doctor Who's that we've ever seen. The foreign landscape as the moon is great. It is certainly scary. It is certainly scary. Those spiders with the pensioners' teeth. Because it's like you can see fangs, but it's also got like just dentures. Like it's got little denture teeth. So I to be honest, I loved it for the first 20 minutes or so. The mystery on the moon, the stuff that's happening. I also think it's got one of the funniest lines when they talk about that Courtney's stolen the psychic paper. She's using it as fake ID, and the Doctor goes, "Why? To get into museums." Brilliant. So for about the first 20 minutes, you think this is going to be a belter. This is going to be an absolute belter. Yeah. It looks $1 million, and then that's when it begins to fall apart. The weirdest thing about it is that this was originally written for Matt Smith's Doctor. I don't know if it was a story that had been held over, or there was the possibility in the pre-production for the series that Matt might stay beyond.
I think they were thinking that, weren't they?
Time of the Doctor. But what would that have looked like? What would that have looked like? You get it with Capaldi.
Yeah, you can. It doesn't make much sense, but it makes more sense with Capaldi than it does with Smith.
Yeah, I mean, would the 11th Doctor abandoning some people to make a decision look like? I'd love to see it, and I'd love never to see it, if you know what I mean.
It just doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't work. And that's it. I mean, that's my main issue with it. The Doctor abandoning Clara and Courtney and Ludwig because that bit where she kind of goes, I don't know if he's coming back, and you're like, well, yeah, actually, I don't know if he's coming back. Yeah. Okay, cool. It's weird to kind of throw when you kind of think, and maybe that's what they're trying to do. It's like, wrong foot. You go, oh, you think you know this new Doctor by now? Well, you don't. But it feels cheap. It feels like kind of like, which you get a lot in Netflix original shows, where it's just like, just to get you to keep watching, they throw a cliffhanger in or like a plot twist that doesn't really actually make much sense for the characters or for the story. Yeah. But it will just keep you watching a bit longer. And it feels the Doctor leaving them all for some reason because of some thing about, you know, the web of time and not being able to make these big decisions, doesn't really wash.
Yeah.
Because Waters and Mars, I think, it's got its flaws, certainly, but I think it works because it's essentially it's a small group of people, and it's basically that base has to blow up regardless of, you know, what happens, and those people have to die to, you know, set humanity off on this particular course. I think that works quite well.
Yeah.
The moon hatching a little alien thing, inspiring people to go out and explore. It's a nice idea. I just don't. I don't know what does. I mean, you see what that looks like,
Yeah.
but then they're looking at it. They're looking at it because they know to look at it. It's like I could just imagine there's that kind of running gag with Donna Noble where she like misses everything.
Yeah.
And you know, you like you could just be making your dinner go, oh, a bit worrying about the moon, isn't it? Oh, aye. It's anyway, dinner's ready. And then like you see on the news, oh, I missed it. Oh, I should have been looking out the window instead of looking at my because it's not this kind of massive event. It kind of just like breaks away, a little thing flies off and then the moon's back.
Yeah. But even then you can tell how confident or not the production is in presenting that. You see them. Well, actually, hold on. I actually downloaded that image for using as a background. So I'm just gonna pull it up. Can you see?
Yeah.
Am I getting in the way? Okay, so there's the so
yeah.
You see this. You see the great bird of the galaxy fly away from the eggy ruin of whatever it has done.
Eggy ruins the episode title there. If anybody's
Eggy
ruin. Note.
But then the thing that you'd think you'd want to see, which is it laying another massive egg the size of it and leaving it behind, is not shown on screen. There's just a look at them all standing on the beach. The Doctor having a kind of, I don't know what he's doing. Is he actually talking or has he gone into like a trance for a seance? And they look back up. Or Courtney says, look, there's another egg. But you never get to see it because presumably the production went, we can't even visualize what that would look like. So can we just cut away at the moment?
Yeah.
That we're supposed to see.
Moon up there when they look back.
Yeah. So, like, even at that point, that's the bit where you really go, okay. I don't even think the production could get their head around what was attempting to be done here. And ultimately, I think this is just a case of Doctor Who being a victim of being Doctor Who, egg, dragon, fucking whatever, and being a prestige sci-fi drama. I think that's what we've got here. We've got two different styles, two different ideas, two different intentions, and that is what we're left with. And you're right, there is something tonally off about something mad, like the moon is an egg, but you're doing an abortion thing, which is incredible. They've went, okay, well, if we've got to be an adult show, then let's start dealing with issues. And the first issue that they deal with is abortion rather than, you know, like the most recent series of Doctor Who, just going, I tell you what, let's build up to abortion via environmental concerns for the globe. Let's talk about plastic before we talk about the interference of church doctrine in you know, civil law.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's just, so a lot of it is unbelievable. Now, it looks amazing. And it's acted amazingly, apart from Hermione Norris. So it's still some of the most watchable Doctor Who, without you really feeling the sting of it. You know, it's not bad in the sense, like, the creature from the pit, Tom Baker, giving a blowjob to a big ball of snot's penis. You know, like, it's not It's not bad like the kind of the colourful excesses of the Twin Dilemma.
No.
There is an
I
interesting.
wonder,
Sorry.
sorry, I was going to say, I wonder if that's why another reason people get annoyed with it is that it does start off Hinchcliffe, with Peter Harness Hinchcliffe the shit out of it, and you feel that you're in for something really spooky and dramatic and exciting, and then it kind of becomes something else entirely. And I wonder if that's it. If that, because people thinking, oh, we're getting like some classic old school Doctor Who. Whoa, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes, and I imagine they had to go for something as ridiculous as fucking this guy. Where is he? This guy. Because if it was rooted in a more human life or death struggle, there would be something very unseemly. I mean, they kind of flag it when they talk about, the Doctor and Clara have had dinner in Berlin in 1937, but you would never expect him to kill Hitler. Yeah. Which also seems like Stephen Moffat settling some scores about why the Doctor wasn't more chastising of Hitler in Let's Kill Hitler. But if you really placed it in like in something a bit more real, which is where you'd think they would do, because the more you can relate to something, the more you would care about the resolution.
Well, that's it. I mean, you look at, as we did in this podcast, you look at Fires of Pompeii and the Aztecs, which are sort of historical events that are far enough away that you can do that story and have that discussion in a way that doesn't sort of cheapen the impact or the importance of those events. Yeah. But then also you get to have that moral discussion over, well, what does it mean to be a time traveler? But yeah, to do it in this kind of mad sci-fi abortion allegory. Yeah, it's
weird.
I'm just saying there's a middle ground. There's a middle ground between like historical tragedy that's far enough away and mad dragon shit.
Yeah. It actually leaves me speechless in trying to get my head around this.
But the thing is, I think we've summed it up quite nicely in that kind of, it's daft Doctor Who couched in prestige drama, and it really suffers as a result.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any more to say about it than that.
Not really. I don't think so at all. So
I mean, I think because I'm gonna say we could probably talk about what the fuck is the Doctor doing until we're blue in the face, but I don't think we'll ever get an answer.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I suspect that after the global success of the 50th anniversary year, the BBC has went, all right, we don't have to keep creating other stuff. Let's just focus on this thing. This thing is obviously like there's a wave to be ridden here,
I don't know if that was the case, but there's certainly, if you look at the schedule like that in 2014, where you've got strictly Doctor Who, strictly results, and then I think Casualty or something like that, was it?
Yeah.
So Doctor Who would be on till, no wait, is that right? Anyway, but it was something like that, or Doctor Who was filling the slot when Casualty was on a break or whatever, as it does, take sort of breaks sporadically.
Yeah.
Whatever it was. But yeah, it's absolutely that. It's that's the kind of prime time drama slot, rather than the precursor to the big Saturday night entertainment stuff.
Yeah. It's a strange old thing. It's a strange old thing. I don't hate it. It weirdly makes me feel uncomfortable, but
nor do I. I don't hate it, and I do feel uncomfortable. And I think I just feel uncomfortable because it's not so much that it's not the Doctor Who I like. It's that it's not the Doctor I recognise from 50 odd years of.
Who was it who said that Clara and the Doctor and their animosity to each other was exhausting? And
Rassilon's trousers. So
yeah,
was,
so I had certainly made that note, which is it's another episode where they're just so catty with each other that it's pretty off-putting. Sometimes, I mean, you know, not necessarily when it's earned, as with the last scene, but he always seems to be going out of his way to just fuck around with stuff and get in her way and try and alter her life and make a mess, and she's constantly whipping him along with her tongue to stop it and get in line and stop doing that, and why don't you realize, which you'd think like other doctors have proved that they can seamlessly and sympathetically exist in people's lives without fucking burning the house down every week. But it constantly seems like he's doing stuff to get a rise out of her, and she's constantly haranguing and henpecking him. And like it just, and it's not just that it's been these last two episodes, the yelling and the caretaker, the arguing and the caretaker, and this, is that has existed since Deep Breath. There's been a kind of weird whininess to Clara, and there's been a weird playing with fire quality to the Doctor, which is kind of just getting old now, I feel. And I wonder, I made the note, and I'll see if it is correct. I wonder if that's why we like Mummy on the Orient Express as much as we do, because it's a quieter, more apologetic, more sympathetic Doctor, who, when he does do something a little darker, at least stops to explain the thinking behind it to his companion. You know, that end of the episode where they're sitting on the shingle beach and they're talking about sometimes you only have bad choices. It's the first time he's ever
even
taken...
before that, it's that thing where he gets her to bring, I can't remember the character's name, but gets her to bring that woman, and then he sort of basically feeds her to the mummy, but doesn't. He kind of reverses it. Yeah. And you're like, well, of course he does, because the Doctor would do that if he had the choice. Yeah. And then obviously you then get the discussion. Yeah, and I think it feels like Doctor Who, and it feels like the Doctor. It feels like, I think, and you get glimpses of this up to that point, absolutely, like in Listen, like in bits of Time Heist, in bits of The Caretaker, that Capaldi's kind of playing a kind of modern version of the classic idea of the Doctor, which is that he is a bit alien, he is a bit brisk, but he does the right thing, you know, and he can be a kind of reassuring presence. And I think Jamie Matheson, I think that's why everybody was just like, this guy's fucking great, because he does, I think, salvage both those characters, actually, even Clara, I think. Because I think you are right by this point. It's a bit like, come on. Yeah. Isn't this getting a little bit old now?
Yeah. Sorry, there's another, before we close this up, there is another reason as to the Doctor's thinking as to why he puts people in this position. Might not be the Doctor at all. It could be the TARDIS taking revenge on Courtney for being sick in it. Going, right, if you're going to vomit at me, do you know what? I'm going to make you fucking go to the egg moon day. Yeah, so you're like them.
The egg moon day.
Eggs. What's your favourite scene and favourite performance?
I like them kind of investigating the sort of Mexican Moonbase, because it is quite creepy and very Doctor Who. Nicely directed. There's a kind of good sense of atmosphere to it and some creepiness.
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. Like, as weirdly problematic and messed up and mushed up as this thing is, it's executed brilliantly. So, I don't know. I like when the TARDIS first arrives on the shuttle, when the shuttle crashes. And the Doctor's checking the atmosphere, as well as saying, "What if you're going to shoot anyone? Shoot the little girl first. You don't want her to see us being shot. Like I like that. That was really good doctory kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Sets up a mystery, is quite funny, establishes the character, gets the measure of the people that they're up against. It was a great Doctor Who scene. I like that.
And also it has the line, well, I could keep regenerating forever. Who knows?
Of course.
Indeed.
The line that started all the trouble. And probably Capaldi. Well, is it? I don't know. Yeah, you're right. Ellis George is Courtney. That was your pick from last episode. I think I want to say that there's a lot of good stuff here for Clara, but I actually don't. I mean, for an episode which is focused on her being the champion of life itself, she actually does spend most of the episode being an archetypal Doctor Who assistant. Just asking, what are you going to do now, Doctor? What's happening, Doctor? Doctor, is this safe? What's going on, Doctor?
And then looking a bit frustrated and bewildered by the Doctor. Yeah, it's not her finest. I mean, I don't think that's down to her, and as much it's just like you say, it's the writing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not given anything to do, there's nothing for you to do. So I think Capaldi is superb as Per. Like he. I mean, if we're looking at the scene, the moon is an egg scene, like the moment you hear it, you just go, this is fucking absurd. But he is 100% on selling that. Yeah. And staring them out, staring not just the other characters, but, staring out the other actors as to go, please give me something back here. Yeah. That this doesn't sink like the Titanic. So...
Yeah. Well, that was Kill the Moon.
Indeed.
God, we talked for about an hour and 15 minutes on Kill the Moon. Kill the Moon.
God almighty. Oof. Well, we're going back to the moon in a jingle's time. We're going to talk about the Moonbase, which is altogether more family
of the same,
fun and orientated. There's no... If nothing else, we learn what nail varnish remover is made from. We go from abortion to learning what nail varnish remover is made from in the Moonbase. So
you can't say that Doctor Who doesn't fill Rethian values.
Okay, well, we're back, and we decided to pair Kill the Egg with the egg base. The Patrick Troughton.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're doing the Moonbase because it's moons in that. That's where we are. And should we just go? We'll just do it. Let's do some stats. Okay, so the Moonbase was written by Kit Pedler and directed by Maurice Barry, who's very much the go-to Cybermen guy for the Troughton era, because he's also Tomb of the Cybermen.
Well, he created them as well, didn't
he? Who, Maurice Barry?
Oh no, sorry, Kit. I'd kind of sorry.
Oh no, so Maurice.
So you're talking about Kit Pedler, but yes.
Yes, so Maurice Barry, he's like the go-to cyber director, as it were. And it was shown between Saturday the 11th of February and Saturday the 4th of March 1967 at crack of dawn, 5:50 p.m. compared to 8:30 for Kill the Moon. And it was watched by about 8.5 million. The lowest was 8.1 million for episodes 1 and 4, and the highest was 8.9 million for episode 2. Those are the official stats. Let me just get rid of that. But we always look forward to not 1 but 2 in every episode. Let's play.
Oh yeah, that's the image for the Moonbase. Oh, it's the wrong Moonbase though. Oh, how embarrassing! I've chosen the Terrence Dixon Barry Letts Moonbase. Oh. But it is time, Ben, as you rightly point out, to play
the Eggsy Where Did It Come game.
Hey.
And we're back to original rules. It's where did the Moonbase come in the Doctor Who magazine first 50 years, first 5 decades poll. So it is out of 200 and fucking something, 242, I think.
241.
That was
241, I think. Yeah.
So where do you think, Derek, Mark, where do you think the Moonbase comes?
So Derek Anderson, for it to see, says, I rewatched the Moonbase again for this, and I found the whole thing a bit slow and boring. More Space 1999 than Doctor Who. It's got some really clunky dialogue. The music is annoying. I love that.
The music,
that,
yeah.
like library space music.
Yeah.
Space music number 4, I think it is. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's like you're ordering
those
off a menu.
And those shower cap hat things are ridiculous. Mind you, I like Kill the Moon, so what do I know? Probably quite popular with the fans, but I'm still going bottom half the poll, so 161. So Derek says quite popular with the fans, but I have a feeling that this isn't particularly well regarded. But then there is a lot of people that pointed out, and which is why I was rifling around in my targets in the week. People were kind of pointing out that the sort of target novelization of this is excellent.
Yeah.
So maybe that has influenced some people in their placing in the poll. So 241. Let's say 119.
Ooh, very close, mate. Very
Is
close.
it?
It's
Yes.
113. 113.
Okay. All right.
Between 112, Snake Dance, and 114, The Pirate Planet. So,
Not bad.
not bad company, really. So yeah, 113. It's interesting. Oh wait, sorry, I was sort of getting ahead of myself. I was going to tell you what I bloody thought. Nobody gives a fuck until we've heard what the listeners think. So let's have some listener correspondence.
Jeff Waddle says, the Moonbase is great in the book, a nonsense storyline on television, but Troughton lifts an average story to make this an enjoyable romp. The story put me off drinking coffee for years. Yeah, me too, which is why I'm drinking whiskey as we discussed the Moonbase, because the coffee's off, mate. The coffee's off. Paul McAvoy, the Moonbase is good, really good. I think in recent years, since its animated release, it's gotten a bit of a renaissance, and people seem to think it's better than Tomb. It isn't. Tomb edges it out on some great little character moments and hilarious 60s racism. But there's still so much to love here. Patrick Troughton is clearly having a blast, and it's so much fun to watch. J.R. Southall says on the Moonbase, I wish I could say that the Moonbase is a terrific piece of television, but sadly it's a bit of a wet fart of a Cyberman serial, coming between their basically the same debut in the 10th Planet and a much more interesting and creepy Tomb of the Cybermen. And at no point during the Moonbase is it ever satisfactorily explained why the Cybermen ought to be skulking around putting poison in the sugar supply. I mean, if you're going to do something as stupid as that, you'd at least pick a foodstuff that everybody's going to eat, wouldn't you? Unfortunately, like everything else in the story, it's a case of the writers having an idea for something creepy and then having to double back somersault to try and find some way of, with their satchel on and their school clothes on, a la Danny Pink, I would imagine, to try and find some way of explaining it in the script. We can see how powerful the Cybermen are. Why don't they just take the base by force? Or rather, why do they faff around with all the other nonsense as a prelude to their eventual attempt to take the base by force? For a species that relies so heavily on logic, they're not terribly good at putting it into practice. I think that's fair. Over on Twitter, hey, there we go. Dylan Reese, the Moonbase is one of those stories I love because of the target book. It seems to conjure a more mysterious environment with Cybermen lurking in the shadows rather than under a blanket. However, the cast and TV version are all super, and it's nice to have the Cybermen back. Keith Gooch, the Moonbase is my favourite. This is quite a haunting story that Keith tells us. It's my favourite Cybermen story of all time. It scared the bejesus out of me as a kid, as I was due to go into hospital to get my tonsils out when I aired, and was worried that Cybermen would snatch my body while I slept there. Ooh, chilling. But the show having the desired effect, I suppose. So, Rassilon's trousers, like Kill the Moon. The Moonbase is very silly, but as it doesn't pretend to be anything other, and I think that's key to what we discussed earlier on. As it doesn't pretend to be anything other than a bog standard Doctor Who story, it's a lot more effective. Objectively, it's a lot rubbish, but I'm still weirdly quite fond of it. And that's that for listener correspondence this week. Thank you to everybody that's written in, as ever. Thank you to everybody that's bought us a coffee as well. Although now I'm slightly more suspicious of that coffee. Don't put sugar in it. Just don't put sugar in it. It's fine. And if you want to do so, buymeacoffee.com/on the time lash. But enough advertising. Let's get back to the Moonbase. What do you think, Ben?
I was firstly, okay. So no, I know when we talked in the break, I was going to ask you the usual place where we start when we've got to deal with missing episodes. How did we watch it? But I know you want to do something a bit more prolonged about that. So I kind of wasn't looking forward to this episode.
Well, that's good. Neither was I.
Could have skipped it.
Just cancelled it. Happily, I watched the third series of Westworld.
Knowing that we were going to hit Kill the Moon, and knowing that I was to expect something a bit shitey, I was like, that kind of like trudge that you do towards stuff that you know is pretty crap, and it's like, why am I even fucking bothered? I have the Moonbase is one of the most familiar Doctor Who's to me.
That's so funny you say that, because I wrote that exact note.
Yeah,
that I know this story inside and out somehow.
Yeah. And I guess I wasn't looking forward to it because I feel like I'd exhausted it, and I was just like, I don't really want to have to go through the motions.
Yeah,
like essentially find time in the day. It's odd saying that, find time in the day when you're in lockdown, but like really give in the reduced amount of stuff that you are able to do, devote some of that time to going through the motions of looking at it. And why is that? Because it was, I've spoken before about how first port of call for some Doctor Who for me was the Years tapes, the Cybermen, the early Years tapes, and of course the Moonbase, the surviving episodes were on that.
Both episodes, isn't it? Yeah.
I think that there must have been a law when I was growing up that every Edinburgh City Council library and every charity shop had a copy of Doctor Who and the Cybermen by Jerry Davis. The Target novelisation.
Flummoxed that I can't find my copy of it. Because I know I definitely have it somewhere.
It seemed like so I definitely read that. I think that. So another reason as well is that this is one of the most photographed Cyberman installments. This was, there was obviously the unexpected success of the Cybermen from the 10th Planet, and before even episode 4 had aired, Kit Pedler was recommissioned to do another Cyberman story. And so when they started filming it, there was a famous photo shoot. So this is obviously this picture of the background from the Ealing filming. So there's a bunch of the Cybermen on the moon pictures about the place, which are incredibly evocative and incredibly, is it Richie guesting ages ago on saying that sometimes,
I think the Ice Warriors episode,
yeah. So sometimes Doctor Who stories, their notoriety is preserved because of the imagery of it rather than the stories themselves, because of the PR job that's done. And with the Cybermen as well, you don't just have the moon pictures, you also have there was the Cybermen out around Ealing Common. There's a whole selection of pictures of them waiting on a bus, telling a school kids what, standing by the road, something like that. They're walking on Ealing Common. There's all that kind of stuff. So I feel like this is quite ubiquitous. now the way I haven't seen it is, I'm so sorry, jumping ahead again. And so whilst I can, and I can relate to everybody in listener correspondence. The people who said that they enjoyed it, I get it. The people who said it was boring, I get it.
Yeah.
I think some of it is pretty boring. I think, like, say, there's a lot of the Doctor just standing in the background of whole scenes where people are barking orders at each other or reading computer screens or whatever. Episode 3, which doesn't exist, but if the soundtrack is or however you encountered it is anything to go by, it's just the Cybermen and their electronic voices and people barking orders around the Gravitron control room with the Doctor just occasionally saying something in the background.
Twiddling knobs and stuff in the animated version.
And what I also feel as well, that in terms of it being boring, is that some of the stuff that you really, really want to see happens in the missing episodes. So what you're left with are the more straightforward representations of the story in episode 2 and episode 4. So watching it again now, like, I just had all of that. Some of it's boring. Some of it I love to bits. Like, I love to bits.
Yeah.
And this is a story that will constantly remind me of when I first started liking Doctor Who. And very possibly, because the Cybermen are the first baddies I encountered, that's why I like the Cybermen more than the Daleks.
Yeah.
And I certainly really like this design of the Cybermen. And, so...
Hang on a second. There we go.
Oh, there he is. I really like the Cybermen. I really like all their 60s designs.
That's not going to work.
So yeah, it's. But what do you think? What do you think of it?
It's funny. Obviously, you and I have a very similar upbringing was the word I was going to use there, but yeah, I guess a very similar kind of Doctor Who upbringing, as it were. So the Years tapes, and that Cybermen Years tape, I think I must have worn out watching it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I must have seen a Cyberman story before I bought it, or maybe not. Maybe it was just the idea of having sort of a collection of episodes of Doctor Who. Maybe that's what appealed to me.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was just a present. Maybe somebody knew I'd got into Doctor Who and had that thought, well, let's give him a kind of compilation tape of Doctor Who. Wouldn't that be great? I can't remember how I came in, but I definitely had it. I definitely watched it a lot. And, it's Colin Baker, isn't it? In the sort of museum of the moving image display.
So he's got all the cyber helmets around him. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I remember that so distinctly. And I remember... it's weird. So part 4 is so memorable because it's the Cybermen on the moon, striding across the moon and getting blown off.
Yeah.
As I said this to you this afternoon when we were chatting to arrange this, like kind of more like A.A. Milne's sort of blustery day for Winnie the Pooh, rather than any kind of scientific knowledge of what it would be like to be on the moon.
Yeah.
But weirdly, the thing I remember most, and for entirely different reasons from Keith, I guess, but maybe rooted in the same kind of fear, is the end of episode 2 where Jamie's in the hospital. Oh no, sorry, the end of episode 1, isn't it? Where Jamie's in the hospital bed and he's menaced by the Cyberman comes in and says,
Phantom
Piper, don't get me. And that really stayed with me for some reason. I don't know what that was, if it was this kind of fear of hospitals or what. But so it holds that same place in my heart and my sort of recollections and stuff like that as it does with you. Now, revisiting it this time, when I bought it on DVD, which funnily enough came out the same year as Kill the Moon. I discovered today, last night, sorry, which I didn't realise, is that the credits for the animation dated to 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of around that exact same time. And I remember really enjoying it, watching the full story with the kind of animation sequences in it. I felt at that point it was probably one of the best animated reconstructions that we'd had up to that point. There was a feeling that we're getting better and more consistent as the range kind of went on.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we've kind of seen in these newer ones, with the Macro Terror and the Faceless, although I've not actually watched the Faceless ones yet or actually own it, because I'm currently arguing with myself over whether or not to spend £30 on a Steelbook Blu-ray of what is essentially the same 6 episodes of television, but told in 3 different ways. I'm not entirely sure.
Sure.
But so yeah, and I remember the enjoying it. This time around, less so, I have to say. I don't know if I just wasn't in the mood for it. But I certainly, part 1, I still had that kind of like nostalgia.
Yeah.
And that really like warm feeling. But I think this time I could definitely see people's criticisms more. It is quite dull in that way that mid-60s Doctor Who can often be quite dull, which is it's all space stations and or spaceships or research stations or whatever it is, and it's people reading things off of computers, and nobody really feels particularly like a real person. Or
everyone's just a kind of scientific functionary.
Yeah.
Nobody looks like a life,
Yeah, but with that being said, there is some really lovely sort of world detail. Like they're still sort of saying, oh yeah, the communications device is up the spout. Or yeah, get him on the blower. All that kind of weird, sort of incongruous, sort of contemporary dialogue in this kind of sort of sci-fi Moonbase story set in sort of 2050 or
2070.
2070. Yeah. Oh, no, not that far out. 20
years. I mean, this is the second moon. This is
yes, this is on the second moon.
This is the new, which kind of makes, which to be honest, it makes sense talking about the continuity. It's like, okay, so the moon was an egg. Now there's a new moon, and with all the environmental dangers which were alluded to in Kill the Moon.
True,
you can kind of understand why humanity wouldn't just leave it up to chance. They would go and build something, some technology, that could control the weather, the environment. And once they'd scientifically got to grips with the fact that the moon is going to be the moon for another billion years before they got to worry about space dragons showing up again, just like, sure, let's just put it on the moon. Put it like the moon's the moon now again, so let's just put it up there. That's true. That's true. So this is essentially seamless. The continuity is seamless.
So I mean, I could see the criticisms of it. I do enjoy it, though. I think there's some really good stuff in it. I mean, this time around, the cliffhangers are essentially just a gradual increase of Cybermen. So, like, end of part 1, it's one Cyberman. End of part 2, it's a few Cybermen. End of part 3, it's all the Cybermen.
It's 14 Cybermen.
So, I get the kind of criticisms of maybe sort of repetitiveness. I don't think it's as simple and as clear-cut as, it's a remake of The 10th Planet, which is something a criticism that gets bandied around quite a lot in relation to the story that I don't think holds much water.
I understand it. Kit Pedler obviously doesn't have a lot of writing experience, so he has just essentially that there's a base with something going on. The Cybermen are trying to, there's a couple of attempts by the Cybermen. I don't think it's a remake. I don't think it's intended as a remake. I think maybe Kit Pedler is showing his writerly inexperience by just redoing the story. Because maybe he thinks there's a couple of things I'd like to try again. Having said, but then, but I can kind of understand, because the second Doctor doesn't really play that much of a role in the proceedings. No,
you say that. You say that.
Yeah.
I would say that this is the moment where Patrick Troughton becomes Doctor Who.
Yes, it is. Yeah. He's kept in the background. Is really what I mean.
Absolutely.
But this is.
But the stuff that he gets to do, and the confidence and the nuance that he brings to the stuff that he gets to do, I think is the first moment where you are just like, this is Patrick Troughton as the Doctor. He's been trying out little it's not the stovepipe hat, it's not the 500-year diary, it's not the recorder, it's not the multiple disguises. It's the kind of the mercurial hobo. Yes
guy.
Yeah, and he's finally kind of settled on that, and I think when he does get stuff to do, he's brilliant at it. So I do really enjoy that about it, and I think that this is probably one of the reasons that I'm a big Patrick Troughton fan, is this story, and watching the 2 episodes of this on the Cybermen years. Or no, isn't it Cybermen years, or is it just
Cybermen the early years? Yes, yeah.
Cybermen the early years. That's it. No, Fraser Hines, I think, is still kind of finding his way as a character, and it is interesting to see the dynamic in that kind of TARDIS team at this stage. Because we're so used to, and we talk about it all the time on this podcast, how great Fraser Hines and Patrick Troughton are together, but they don't actually get to spend that much time together. And actually, at this stage, and I think it's something that kind of carries on into the Macra Terror, certainly, that there's this kind of maybe brotherly, but it seems more like kind of like sort of alpha male posturing between Jamie and Ben.
Yes, yeah.
Whilst the Doctor is kind of this more distant scientific figure.
Yeah.
That then once Ben and Polly leave and the Faceless Ones, it then just becomes this kind of much more interesting Doctor companion relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But Hines as Jamie is still quite childlike and he's a bit of a lummox, is what I wrote down. Yeah. Like he tries to do a sort of spacewalk and lands flat on his face and ends up in a hospital.
Something hits his head so severely that he's out and he's got to have a bandage on, and he's out for
it's
hours, days.
Almost as if they realised that having 3 companions in the TARDIS was maybe stretching it somewhat.
Well, when the first draft was written, they didn't know that Jamie was going to be staying on as a companion. So just to get rid of him, just to have him there, but get rid of him for a bit, so there wasn't like a major amount of rewriting done. They just knocked him out for a bit, and then in the episodes which he's in, they kind of give him some of Ben's lines. That's why Jamie doesn't say that. Yeah, that's why Jamie doesn't really know anything. He's talking about we sprinkle witches. There's all that kind of like low level historical character bump. But then in episode 4, he's able to look at the kind of navigation map thing, which shows the rescue rocket being diverted from the moon.
Yes.
Like he's able to follow that piece of technology and understand what it means. Like it's because Ben would have said that, because a naval man would have understood that thing. So, but they gave it just give it to Fraser Hines so that he earns his money for the week.
But where are we? Ben and Jamie. Let's talk about how we watched it.
Yeah.
Put a jingle in there. That'll break it up. Because as I sort of mentioned briefly there, I watched the DVD version with the animated episode 1 and episode 3. Is that right?
Yeah.
All that stuff I was saying about the assignment in the early years, it's the opening of part 2 that got me. and the end of part 2 with the hospital.
Yeah, so it's the reprise, yeah.
Yeah, it's all the hospital shit that creeped me out as a kid. Yeah, but so watched the animated one, and it's funny, it highlighted to me something that I think a lot of people have been wondering recently with these sort of animated Blu-rays and DVDs and stuff like that, of the macro terror and the faceless ones, where there is not so much the macro terror, but when the faceless ones was announced, they were like, well, why are they animating episodes that we already have? I think it's a fair question to ask, but I found watching the Moonbase as kind of animation, live action, you do feel the shift in forms, and it can take you out of it if you're in a particularly analytical mood, which, you know, when we watch stories for this podcast, we are. It's that everything's sharper and cleaner and crisper in the animation than it is in the live action. However, in the live action, you get much more texture, you get much more nuanced, like physical performance in it. Like the Doctor sort of getting the samples off everybody and stuff like that just wouldn't work so well in the animation. It'd be really hard to do, to the point that obviously in part 3 there's where he's got to kind of like twiddle the knobs on that device before the Cybermen realize he's doing it. It doesn't work so well on the animation because it's kind of, because they don't have the budget really to kind of properly animate.
Yeah.
So I think if you want to kind of immerse yourself in a story and you have the option to do either everything as an animation or then do the kind of telesnaps thing, which I'm never a big fan of, but we'll have to do soon in an episode a couple of weeks away. Yeah, I don't know. I can see, watching it this time, I can see why they've gone to the effort of animating every episode of the Faceless Ones in full color or black and white, whatever, you know, whatever option you prefer.
Sure.
So, but I think it's also interesting to see kind of how far we've come with that animation as well. Because I think I don't know how you watched it, but I do think it's the closest in terms of representation of the actual actors. I think they've done pretty well.
Yes, yeah. So how did I watch it? Well, I put my time in. I watched the animation. So firstly, I've spoken before about being kind of trapped away from my collection. So I'm relying on BritBox. So the animations are up on BritBox, as are the surviving episodes. So I watched it like that. I watched the animations and the surviving episodes. But dutifully, I also sought out on YouTube the loose cannon reconstructions.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So they're so I'll tell you what. So they're not called loose cannon. I think the original outfit before loose cannon was, I think, called Joint Venture. I think the Moonbase was actually one of the earliest fan reconstructions, and so I looked at those as well. And then I also when I was watching those, because their resolution of the telesnaps aren't very good, I went to the archive of the telesnap photo novels on like the 2005 version of the Doctor Who's BBC website. Yeah. Those are still there. Now, you can't find them via the website. You've got to Google in Doctor Who Moonbase photo novels and you find the page. And it's there, and it's got the Crusade, and it's got the Ice Warriors and all the surviving telesnaps. Pretty good resolution as well. And because I wanted to see it. I wanted to see what it actually was rather than a representation, because the imagery for the Moonbase is quite bewitching to me. So I wanted to see the real, like, I wanted to see what in episode 3 where the Cyberman is chasing Benoit and Ben comes out and lobs a canister of stuff at. I wanted to see what a melted Cyberman on the surface of the moon looked like. I wanted to see the beginning of the Cybermen marching out across the moon's surface for the final attack on the Moonbase. I wanted to see that kind of stuff, and I don't have a problem. And if anything, it's more, well, okay, I don't want to say it's more rewarding, but I think you end up understanding the episode better than if you're just presented with a single entity of it, because you can kind of maybe take it for granted. But if you look at it in a couple of different ways, you get to grips with it in a couple of different ways. And
Okay.
so that's why I kind of feel coming out of this that I think if the whole thing was there, we'd probably think better of the Moonbase, because the two more boring episodes are the ones that have survived. Where I think that, because it's not even just with the Cybermen as well, like jumping ahead to my favourite scene is I would really love to see the scene in episode 3 where the Doctor is having a conversation with his own thought process.
Yes. Yeah.
Because what does that look like? How did they film it? Are there different camera angles for the different version of the Doctor that's speaking? According to the production notes that I encountered, it was the stuff on the soundtrack that sounds a bit more hushed is pre-recorded thoughts that were played in,
Right,
and then Troughton responds to those thoughts. But I'd love to see that. Like, I'd love to see a lot of stuff, which I don't know if I would want to see. Like, I would like to see. I like mess, so I'd like to see the Cybermen gushing from their chest.
Shaving foam out of their chest.
Yeah, when Ben and Jamie burst in with the squirty guns. I made a joke about learning what is in nail varnish remover or nail polish remover. And I can understand why there's that kind of little Reithian telling the children what are acetates and what's alcohol and solvents. But then there's a bit where Ben is explaining what a spray bottle is.
Yes.
And I was like, are they doing that because like spray bottles are new then? Were they invented in like the mid 60s? Is that what? Because it would be a new piece of technology to the audience, you know.
That thought had come into my head and I forgot to kind of check to see when
I did a bit of a Google.
Entered the,
I went to the Wikipedia of the history of spray bottles, and I mean they were there from about the 50s. I would imagine people would have been familiar enough with them. I don't know. So.
Yeah, but it's funny that they kind of go into like quite detailed explanations. But then maybe it's Kit Pedler just going, not Kit. Yeah, it's Kit Pedler.
Kit Pedler, yeah.
Maybe it's just Kit Pedler falling back on what he knows, which is science, just to pad out the episode. It's just like, I'll just write a quick explanation of what this is and what that is, and that'll fill out some time.
Yeah. Well, it's also to give the companions something to do as well. You know? You've got 3 companions, but you've also got an able band of scientists who run the base, who are the ones really that the Cybermen are communicating with. Yeah. So, you know, it's not... so it's maybe Jerry Davis is maybe a script editor thing going, fanning around for a bit with a plastic. Explain what that is.
Well, the other thing about sort of Ben and Polly is that it's a good job that they're still there, because obviously they're there to recognise the Cybermen, because the Doctor was barely there during the 10th planet. So
of course he was, yeah.
It's
good. And it is interesting. So it is interesting that she recognises them, considering they look quite different. Completely different,
yeah. But then they kind of sort of play it cautiously, where it's just, at least I think it was a Cyberman. Yeah. Because there was some handles. But what I find interesting, and I wonder if this is kind of where you get that, I don't know what the intention was with it, basically. Either it's the kind of big finish, and now the current series, the Cyber Wars, the great Cyber Empire, or if it's literally just like that strange event in the North Pole that entered the history books. You know, the line, well, everybody knows there was Cybermen, but they're all gone.
Yeah.
Like, in the context of the time, I would have assumed that they just meant that obviously that's quite a momentous. There's another planet. The Earth has a twin planet, and these guys came down from that planet to try and colonize it. That would enter, because that was 1986. That's supposed to happen. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So then that would enter the history books and stuff. But I do think that line is then they kind of springboard off that to give you Tomb of the Cybermen, where they're this sort of universal legend
Yes. Yeah.
that have kind of run roughshod over the galaxy and are now kind of lying dormant. And then that kind of influences like Revenge of the Cybermen and like I say, the Timeless Children and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, you also had, when they showed up at the Battle of Canary Wharf and were all in folks' houses around about the mid 2000s.
True.
Yeah. There's all that cyber stuff going on.
But I quite liked that idea that, because it's so often in Doctor Who, you kind of have an adventure and then you return to a time period. And people say, "Well, no idea, mate. Don't remember that happening at all." So it's quite nice for that to be. So then when they say Cybermen, he's like, "Don't be ridiculous," and it's not, because there's no such thing as Cybermen. It's like nobody's seen a Cyberman in 10 years, mate. I must have seen about 4 Cybermen in about 1986.
Yeah. It's interesting because you do get a sense that they are, presumably they're slyly unraveling some plans because they're a diminished force.
Yes.
They could have just taken the Moonbase by force of arms, but they've got to do stuff a bit more secretly because that's all that's left. That bunch that you see, that's all. Although, because then there's like 3 pie-dish ships that land. There's.
So we've got backup.
Yeah, so there's loads. Yeah. But then maybe it's just those 3 ships. Maybe that's it. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of does start to get a bit kind of confused as to. I think JR's right in the sense that it's like, well, okay, first of all, they're kind of covert. So there's clearly not that many of them. But then they kind of get defeated. But then, there's another ship on the moon. Yeah. And then they call for another ship. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you just mount a full-on invasion of, I guess you don't want to send off any alarm bells. But it's like, oh, well, that didn't work. Let's try this strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the logic in what they're trying to do. If we're presuming that those 3 ships are that's your lot, that it's just that amount, there's not enough that they could just land on Earth like the Daleks do and just fucking hammer at the population, and it's nothing. There's just not enough to do that global takeover. So they do need to seize control of a big gun, essentially. That's what the gravitron is. That's a big gun, and from far away, they can start naming their terms, making their demands. So I get that. I feel like, and even they can't afford to let the Moonbase notify Earth if they just invade the Moonbase. So they've also got to do it very slyly, very slowly. Do something like introduce a plague, which will gradually kill everyone without any kind of suspicion that there's some invasionary tactic going on here, and then they move in. I also feel that there's something as well, which is they've deliberately put it into the sugar because they want to kill off basically the fat bastards who have sugar in their diet, who are not prime biological specimens for conversion. And so all that's left are because then the people who are taking the sugar are the people who carry out their plot. And so there's still some work in trying to define the plan, but I can see I can see why there would be because in episode 3 you also get a sense as well that the cyber leader that they're speaking to, who goes clever, is he's just putting you on when he's going, we don't have these emotions. It's like, yeah, you do. Like you're fronting out this weird kind of robotic cyber idea, but actually you've got a lot of. Because I was thinking that there's got to be something in the fact that they're called Cybermen, not cyber people or cybers or something like that. That there's something whilst they may purge themselves of emotion, one of the things that they've retained is a kind of like machismo, a male bravado. And that's why they end up making a lot of mistakes, is because they've kind of boiled themselves down to this kind of male ideal without any of the kind of emotional sense to go along with it, and they just kind of like pig-headedly batter into situations.
Yeah.
There's got to be something interesting because I always remember Russell T Davies when he was writing The Next Doctor. Why is the Cyber Dreadnought a big Cyberman? And he was like, well, look at the Tomb of the Cybermen. They have artwork of themselves on their buildings. So they must hold themselves and their physicality in some kind of degree of worship or art form or something like that. So
there's definitely a sort of weird pride there.
Yeah.
Which is surely an emotion.
Yeah.
So the whole kind of emotionless.
Yeah. So what they probably
Cold War.
Yeah. So what they maybe mean when they say we've purged ourselves of emotion is they've purged themselves of like negative emotion or anything that might be construed as feminine, and what's left is this kind of fucking beef-headed jock mentality, and that's why they're Cybermen. That's so,
I like that.
There's something there. I think there's something there. Yeah, I don't know. So I mean, I'm very forgiving of this. I guess that's what I feel like towards the Moonbase. It's been part of my fandom for so long. I'm actually very forgiving, and I enjoyed going back to this now and seeing the animation and watching the animation.
Yeah, and it is good. I mean, like I say, it is quite jarring to kind of go from that kind of sharp focus animation to thing, but it does hold. I think it does hold together quite well. It's a really enjoyable Cybermen story that I think holds a special place in my heart. So I can't be too harsh on it. I can see the flaws, absolutely. But I think there's just some really great stuff in it. And in terms of like kind of where it sits in the Troughton era, I think he's really into the groove as the Doctor now.
Yeah.
And goes off into some really interesting and exciting places as that character. So that's great.
Yeah, it does. It's apparently Maurice Barry was one of the people who helped reshape the Doctor's character. It was him that vetoed in this production a lot of the kind of the comic excesses, like the playing of the recorder and all that kind of the having of the hat. So it's, as well as new Cybermen, you also get like a new version of the Doctor. But yeah, when you say there's a special place, there's a special place in it for this in my heart as well, because when I lived in London, I was very near Ealing Common, so I got a thrill looking at these promo pictures were taken of the Cybermen out and about in Ealing, because I would pass these places. I saw that bus stop where the Cybermen were hailing a bus. I saw where they were walking across the common. It's there's a weirdness where there's a thrill going to see an actual filming location. There's also a thrill to be had from where like a promo picture was taken.
Yeah.
Did I imagine it, or did we go up Arthur's Seat to where that a Radio Times image was taken of Joe Grant and fucking what's his name, Stuart Bevan. Was taken on Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh. For the Green
Maggots,
Death. Yeah.
Well, it was for the Radio Times 10th anniversary thing. No, it wasn't. Was it?
Yeah, would it have been?
Or was it just? I don't know what it would have been for, but basically, that. Yeah. I don't think we did. I think we talked about we were going to go up Arthur's Seat and recreate it for the Green Death episode of the podcast, but we just never got around to doing it.
Yeah, I think I went up and went looking for that kind of rocky outcrop of it.
But the problem with and it's the same. So I live not too far from where they filmed Summer Fury from the Deep.
Yeah.
Which was on Botany Bay, which is quite near Margate. And I remember going there quite recently. And it's like you try and you've got the kind of photo, but because of coastal erosion,
Yeah.
and, 50 years worth of coastal erosion,
Yes.
you got no fucking idea where about on that beach they actually were,
Yeah.
and what cliff they were sitting in front of and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's still, you still get a little thrill of like, Patrick Troughton stood here.
Yeah. Yeah, you get there's a vibe on the air. You get, I think.
Yeah.
Should we bring it in? Are we closing in on that?
Yeah.
What? So I've said my favorite scene. What's yours?
I've got a couple, both of them Troughton related. Some corners of the universe have bred the most terrible evil.
Yeah.
That's like, it's kind of, it's. I think it's a quiet moment, but it's a very doctorish moment, and I think it kind of restates. Actually, no, restates isn't maybe the word. Actually, I think it resets the mission statement for the series, and it becomes more about the Doctor is, because up to this point you could argue the Doctor has kind of found himself in situations and has had to be the hero and help out where he can, whereas this is it sort of resets it as more of a calling.
Yeah.
So I think that's, in terms of the kind of history of the show, I think that's quite an interesting bit. And the other bit is, again, it's in like a little quiet moment. I think it's sort of the start of part 4, where everybody's like ducking down when the Cybermen are about to fire on the dome, and the Doctor's just standing defiant, looking out at the window.
Yeah.
Because presumably he guesses that it's probably going to bounce back, but he's not entirely sure. But
Yeah.
he's not gonna be cowed by the Cybermen. I think that's really great. So yeah, those two, and I don't know if you would have guessed this from those two choices, but my favorite performance is Patrick Troughton.
Yes.
Well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, same for me.
I think he's great in this.
Yeah, he is.
It's definitely him coming into his own as the Doctor, and all those little touches and little flourishes, that, because there's still some really comic moments in this, but they feel less showboaty, and they feel more kind of as kind of extensions of the character rather than extensions of Patrick Troughton trying to figure out what the hell he's going to do with the character. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like Patrick Troughton. I mean, I've spoken at length before on how I like Ben and Polly. They don't get a lot to do, but when they do, there are some good moments, and I do like Ben's weird relationship with Jamie. Like, they're obviously fighting over a girl, essentially. So, but outside of the regulars, there's Patrick Barr, there's Hobson, but who else is there? There's the French guy who would also go on to be the French guy in the Pink Panther films, the kind of assistant to Clouseau. But
there's also Evans, who has a quite spectacular quiff. He has to kind of sort of nestle the cyber control unit over so that he still gets to kind of have his quiff. Yeah. I like that bit.
So there's and of course this is, I mean, I have no idea which is him, but this is John Levine's first encounter with Doctor Who as one of the Cybermen.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Walking across the moon's surface. Yeah, there's a lot to like, and going back to what I said at the very start, the stuff in Kill the Moon. So, like, they fix a hole in the dome in the Moonbase with a tea tray, and then they have a kind of metal plate thing do the same in Kill the Moon. It just flies off a table and stops a breach. There's the use of spray bottles, and on the surface of the moon, Ben goes out with a canister to lob at a Cyberman and destroys it. And when they try to do the same sort of thing on a space moon spider, Hermione Norris just goes, "Doesn't work as a vacuum." She takes on the the voice of a "didn't happen" kind of fan on Twitter, and just goes, "No, don't do that, because it's not going to work. That wouldn't happen. That wouldn't be a thing. So, so there's a lot of fun to be had. So, yeah. There was a lot of chat there, mate. There was after you sent me a message going, I don't have a lot to say.
Yeah, but we managed it. We pulled it off.
So, yeah, okay. Well, that looks like it was Kill the Moon and the Moonbase.
Indeed.
So
next time,
yeah, what we're gonna do? Should we try and do this again? This was quite funny.
Sorry,
so I'm gonna do from my right to left. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Well,
next time. Yeah. Next time. Next
time.
Okay.
Fucking hell.
So it's Mummy on the Orient Express, and
yes,
we're pairing that with Pyramids of Mars. Just mummy stuff.
Mummy's Egyptian imagery. And also, I feel like Peter Capaldi does a Tom Baker impression in Mummy and the Orient Express.
Does he?
Well.
That'd be, yeah.
So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, it's just I think I'm really looking forward to both. I've not seen Pyramids of Mars in years.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's definitely going to be one of these podcast recordings where the prep is a pleasure.
Yeah.
Rather than a chore. So that's good.
And all of it exists. We don't have to go fucking looking for photo novels on archived websites. And
yeah, we can just stick it on BritBox or pull it down from the shelf or whatever we want to do.
Yeah.
And it's there. So yes, so if you have any thoughts, although it'll be pointless because we'll have already. Here's the thing. Here's what you could do for us. So after that, as you listen to this, Ben and I will have decided that we'll be doing Flatline after Mummy and the Orient Express, and we'll be pairing that up with the Celestial Toy Maker because they're both about kind of weird interdimensional beings and about the Doctor being absent and the companion having to kind of fulfill that role. So yeah, if you've got any thoughts on those stories, tweet us on the Time Lash or let us know on our Facebook page. That would be great. Yeah. So that's that.
That sure is that. Again, thank you.
I'd be Mark, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, again, thank you to everybody who has bought us a coffee. Much appreciated. If, however you're encountering this, listening or watching, please give us a like and a subscribe and a share and a mention in your will, whatever works for you. That would be great. But yeah, I've been Ben and you've been wonderful.
Oh, me? No, I've been Mark. Ben has been wonderful. The listeners have been wonderful. And here's the wonderful Kev McCulloch.